Good day. It's iBook Bindings live stream, and today we have something special to discuss. We invited Ruben Malayan, our today's guest, to discuss Armenian manuscript history, Armenian calligraphy, Armenian scripts. A lot of bookish stuff related to Armenian and Armenian history. So we're happy to have you here, Ruben.
Thank you for this opportunity and invitation. It's very nice of you, and I have a lot of respect for bookbinders, and anything that is actually related to book culture is to me sacred. I would not even be scared to say that word. So I'm really happy to be here.
Great. So I'm Stepan. I'm in Windsor, UK. Pavel is joining us from Serbia. From Belgrade, and Ruben, where are you located at the moment?
I'm in Yerevan, Armenia.
Okay.
We are freezing here because it's 3rd of May, but it's 10 degrees outside, and it's unbelievable. It's quite cold, so we are all kind of, freaked out. But yeah, it's basically spring, so supposed to be warm, but not yet. So I'm here in my studio, and now if you want, I'd like to introduce myself, who I am, what I do.
Yeah, sure.
So by education, I'm a graphic artist. I studied painting for 4 years, and graphic arts, that is special methods of printing, like etching and linocut and all silk screen and stuff like that. By profession, I'm a graphic designer and art director, but I don't do so much commercial work anymore because I kind of got tired of it and started teaching, which was always something I wanted to do. And my father was a teacher of drawing for 40 years, so it's in my genes, I suppose. And so this is my background. I teach right now at the American University of Armenia, which is in Yerevan, not so far from where I am. Mm-hmm. It's probably the best university in this country. But one thing we're trying to fix now is to start a new program on design, which didn't exist in the university, but I'm building it right now. So I'm very hopeful that in a couple of years we'll be able to launch undergraduate degree in creative industries, that is different things. So the university.
Let me intervene for a moment as we started discussing higher education in Armenia. Are there any options to study anything related to book as an object, book restoration, book binding, maybe, I don't know, as a part of a course? I think there should be some education dedicated to book restoration at least. How is it there?
We have, as you're probably aware, we have a big museum for an institute for manuscripts, which is called Uru, and it houses thousands of manuscripts, both also in Armenian and other languages, in Arabic, in Persian, in Russian, and in many different languages. So I'm sure that they do have some special training for the people that work on restoring the manuscripts. But I'm not aware of actually that being part of any academic program in Armenia. Right now, actually, our art education is not just art education, but the education system in general is in total crisis. Mm-hmm. So the old models don't work anymore, but the new models are not ready for, and so it's a real issue right now. Unfortunately, we don't have the people with the will to fix this, to go for big reforms and try to put education on a level that it needs to be right now. So these efforts are not yet bearing any fruit. but that's the state universities. But the private universities, like the American university, has got more chances. So I hope that eventually we will get to that as well. So if the program will be in creative industry, why not also teach bookbinding? Why not teach working with manuscripts? That is also a profession and a creative profession. So hopefully at some point.
Okay.
Actually, I can elaborate on that a little bit. When about a year ago, we wanted to invite someone from Matanadaran, I looked at the colloquiums and the scientific work, and I looked through where they were all educated themselves, and it's either Soviet education, so Moscow, St. Petersburg, and the like, or in the very few cases where the young people were involved, they were all educated in Europe. So,
yeah. That makes sense, Pavel. It's a problem because, and I think this is a problem that most countries in post-Soviet space experienced after a system that was there for 70 years, which actually had a very good educational model, which worked many generations of people were taught in a very academic and profound way, but then when that system was gone, so it started to decay, it started to regress. It did not it went through a difficult period. So it's not strange that people don't have good education in arts anymore right now. It's not strange.
Okay. Well, we hope it will change, and with your help,
yes.
as well, I guess.
Yes, absolutely.
So, what happened next? How did you get to calligraphy and all that stuff?
Well, I was actually one day I got a letter from New York, and it was from editors of this book, which is the Encyclopedia of Calligraphy, that was published in New York in 2011. So one of the editors of this book is Christopher Calderhead, who's a famous calligrapher himself, and he's very well known in the world. He edits also a few other magazines dedicated to calligraphy. So they did this book, and they wanted to find an Armenian calligrapher who would do the Armenian part. They went on Google and wrote Armenian calligraphy, and there were 0 results except my website that had some some work I'd done before, just few pieces, nothing more. But they thought, okay, at least one person we know that is doing this, and they sent me a letter, asked me if I want to contribute, and I was happy to do it. It took me 6 months to prepare all the stuff that is in this book, but the results are quite impressive. So the entire Armenian part of this book I did myself. So also the text, which tells the story of the Armenian alphabet, the tools that were used, and different versions of alphabets that Armenians use. So yeah, this book was the reason why I started to do it seriously.
Okay, interesting. Now I need to get this book.
Yeah, you can buy it on Amazon.
Okay.
It's called The World Encyclopedia of Calligraphy.
Okay.
It's not expensive. I think it's about $30 or something like that, but it's a good resource because most alphabets in the world are represented in that book, and it's quite useful.
Okay. I wanted to mention before we move any further. I wanted to mention, as usual, that we are always happy to see comments from our viewers with questions, obviously, to our guests, and also when they post from where they are joining us, because it's always interesting and fun to see from which country, from which region people are joining. So please comment, and also check the links in the description of the video. There are a couple of links to Ruben's website and Instagram, please subscribe, and also our social network links, which are also pretty useful for everyone, I guess. And so also please subscribe. So let's move on, and I hope we'll have some comments and questions there, and we'll just
and hopefully from people from Armenian diaspora, which is well widespread over the world. From what I remember, there are more Armenians outside Armenia than there are in.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. I think we're barely around 2 million now that lives in Armenia. The statistics say 3, but I don't believe it. And I think there are about 10 million Armenians in the world. Yeah, most of us are not here.
Well, my wife's grandmother was half Armenian, so here's that.
My grandfather was Armenian, and from a long line of Armenians in Iran that then moved to Russia and are now dispersed throughout the world. So that's a very typical family history for an Armenian, because it didn't start just now, just in the last 100 years. Armenians have always been present all over Europe, all over Middle East, and far beyond.
Yeah, it's the destiny of the Armenian people. So it seems, to be dispersed and have a big diaspora, which is
big
also
cultural impact as well.
Yeah. I think it is for me now. It is very important, because the diaspora is sort of, the Noah's Ark, I would say, in a sense of culture, because, Armenia is in a very difficult political situation right now. We experienced a catastrophic war just 2 years ago, so the nation is going through a trauma, which is an ongoing process, and it's quite painful. So the diaspora is something that that no matter what happens to us here, we still have a lot of culture, Armenian culture, spread around the globe. And if we won't make it, then at least in their parts, it will survive. But I'm not going to be so pessimistic. I think we are going to make it, and we're just going to have to work harder. That's it.
But also the history of Armenian book culture isn't just in Armenia, in modern day Armenia, because what's called Golden Age is more associated with Cilician Armenia, which was on the Mediterranean, and also a great school of Armenian art, of Armenian manuscript copying is in Venice. There's certainly a hope and a big future for this culture.
Yeah. It is true. I've been in Venice, and I've been on that island, and I've seen those pieces of art and also books, fantastic books. They were really champions of printing. But it didn't just happen in Europe. It also happened in Constantinople. It happened in Iran. It happened wherever Armenians were. They established printing presses. They published books. The first Armenian map was printed in Amsterdam in 1666. So beautiful Armenian letters on it, and it's a map of the world in a large size. So yeah, we've been all over the place, and we kept printing books, and but of course before that, a long tradition of manuscript art that you mentioned. Kilike, yes, was a place of but it's interesting when we talk about the illumination and Armenian manuscript art. I always tell my students that although there are different schools of miniature painting that come from different parts of historical Armenia and outside Armenia as well, the part that was done in Cilicia had a very heavy Byzantine influence. The part that was done in parts of Armenia that's closer to Persia has got Eastern influence on it. But the parts in Vaspurakan, which is the heart of Armenian highland, around Lake Van, and that school of illumination, it's called Khizan, and it's a Vaspurakan school. It's again 11th to 13th to 14th century, the time when architecture was on peak, when manuscript art was generated in big capacity and reached a very high level. So that part in around Lake Van is pure Armenian. When you look at the style of illumination, you see that there is no influence from the outside, not Byzantine, because Toros Roslin was a great master, but it bears a very heavy European influence on the style, on iconography, on the way that he handles color, the way that the scene is composed and all of that. So Van is different. In Van, you see naivety that doesn't exist in the manuscripts that come from Cilicia, because they're very royal and they take this very seriously. But the paintings that were done around Van are so immediate, are so pure, are so like genuinely human, so that they impress me more than very official visual language that was used for Cilician. That's my subjective perception. This is what I prefer and I like, although in no way I diminish the importance of the Cilician manuscript.
A friend of mine who's a historian of late medieval art once said that calling Toros Roslin an Armenian painter is as wrong as calling Andrei Rublev a Russian painter. While technically true, they are both great European painters. They are great painters in the international style of their time.
So this parallel is very good one, because Rublev was they're masters in art that transcend nationality. That they are bigger than they're just a local framework. They create work that is universal, and there are people, and Toros Roslin definitely belongs to that group. So does Andrei Rublev and many others.
We got a couple of comments, and I wanted to read them because they come from two people that sort of helped to kickstart this talk today. First is from Armina Gazaryan, who helped us to connect with hi from Ghent, Belgium, and the other is from Robert Portinga. I'm not sure if I read the last name correctly, but I know that Robert follows us for quite a long time. Barov Dzes from Holland, thank you for taking the time to speak to us. I'd love to hear how the Armenian calligraphy is connected to the traditional tagir bird letters and how these letters came to be in the tradition. So if that's a question that goes along your today's story, that's
absolutely. Well, look, guys, we have to make a distinction, and this is important. We have to make a distinction between miniature painting and calligraphy, even though these two overlap, but they are not the same thing. So when you talk about letters constructed from birds in contemporary terms, I would call that lettering and not calligraphy. It is classically considered a miniature painting. So it is wrong to call it calligraphy, because calligraphy focuses on the plasticity of the letter itself, is not decorating the letter or using letter shape to create an image, be it a person, a bird, or whatever you want, but rather focuses on the letter itself and on the plasticity of the letter. So this we need to sort of draw the line between the two, because the manuscript art and manuscript painting has been extensively studied. But calligraphy was not. And it was not because both of them were perceived as the same. Even though calligraphy needs a separate study, it is a different thing. So when somebody asks me, like, could I write in tagir in those birth letters, I tell them I can, but I'm not gonna write them. I'm gonna draw them. That's the difference. You're not writing these letters. You are drawing them.
Okay.
So if you look at the interestingly, Armenian was always basically very mixed up. So there wasn't really a uniform way to compose a page in let's say a Bible, because there was some, of course, logic of how the page is constructed, how much text can you put in, but there is also was very arbitrary. So a lot of the time there are no clear rules. Every scribe who worked on that manuscript had his own idea on how to manage the information on the page, and scripts were mixed. A lot of scripts were used simultaneously, so they would write. And it is the same, I think, in European manuscripts as well. If it's written in Gothic, most of the time the capital letters are decorated, are larger, are bigger. So basically the same logic Armenian follows. So in Armenian case, it could be the first letter would be drawn as a tagir or in other decorative style, and the rest of the text was written with a uniform bolorgir, I think mostly for readability, so that it would be easier for you to read the text.
Perhaps then we could go to the beginning and say how Armenian calligraphy begins, because from what I remember, the earliest examples of Armenian alphabet are inscriptions. But
Yeah.
what actually do we know in terms of calligraphy?
Yeah, and this is an interesting story. This is really interesting story because there is a lot of debate and a lot of controversy regarding the origins of the Armenian alphabet. And I'm going to be careful with what I'm going to say, because there are some things that are not really, you cannot speak about them with 100% certainty. We're talking about events that happened over 1600 years ago, and things that happened 5,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago, of which we have no record. So it is, and I don't want to speculate too much, but I will suggest we do a reasonable thing. It is just look at this question from a rational point of view, from the point of view of practice, how useful it would be, and then it would make sense whether what I'm saying is makes sense or not. So the official story is that Mesrop Mashtots in the 5th century creates Armenian alphabet, which is 36 classical letters. 36 is not an accidental number, because alphabet was mathematical formula. We did mathematics using Armenian letters, just the same way that Latins or Romans did use Latin letters for mathematics, because the Arabic letters came much later. So initially, when Mashtots was actually compiling the alphabet, he was thinking of mathematics. He was thinking about the mathematical formula arranged in the alphabet. And 36 is not, like I said, is not accidental. It's the 24 that come from Aramaic and Greek, and addition of 12 letters which were missing. Missing because Armenian phonetically is much diverse, more diverse than Greek, for example, or any other language. So we have a lot of letters that sound slightly different, but have an exclusive letter assigned to the sound, like B, P, and P. We have a letter for P, which is a very soft one. We have C, C, and Z. Imagine the range that is just the phonetics of the language. Now, where controversy starts is when people ask a reasonable question. They say, how come Armenians who lived in this part of the world probably from the very beginning, and the very beginning I'm talking about not 5,000 BC, but much, much older, because the earliest, like the archaeological studies that have been done in Armenia proved that there was a human settlement here 12,000 years ago. That is much earlier than, for comparison, the walls of Jericho, the first walls that were constructed, is the 7th century BC. No, sorry, 7,000 years BC. So we're talking about another 3,000 or 4,000 year older human settlement in Armenia. So how come, you've been here this long and didn't have your own writing system, or like having a very long history, but still use Greek, Aramaic, or any other alphabet to write your own language? That doesn't make sense. Now, another argument that is brought forward that Armenians did have an alphabet before Mashtots is that from the moment that Mashtots alphabet was introduced, a golden age of Armenian literature began. And it is not possible that you all of a sudden produce gems of literature that is a peak of your, of your poetry, or of your philosophical thought, of your, you start translating from Greek and classical authors into Armenian, and some of them survive only because of the Armenian translation. The original is lost, but there is an Armenian translation of a classical work, and this is how it survives. So for me, the probable answer is, of course, arrival of Christianity, which was in Armenia a very difficult and painful process, a very bloody process. Everything that was pre-Christian was mostly destroyed. All the pagan, culture that was very deep in Armenians been around. It's one of the oldest nations in the world, and they've been around a very long time. So they had a very strong system of beliefs in their own gods. And when Christianity arrived, it needed to make sure that the old doesn't survive. So there is a place for new. If you want to plant a tree, you have to make sure that the ground is leveled. And this is what they did. And most likely Armenian alphabet that was pre-Christian fell a victim to that process just as well.
And what do you think about the influence of cuneiform? Because when I went to Armenia, in the earliest churches, you often find incorporated stones covered in cuneiform. They often have crosses cut over them, but the crosses themselves respect the text. They destroy as little as possible. So it could be that some form of cuneiform was used in Urartu, say?
Look, I have to also say something that is very important that we understand. When we talk about, especially with connection to cuneiform, which is, was a system of writing widespread in Middle East, and most of the most of the languages were written down using cuneiform from Mesopotamia, starting from Sumer and Akkad and all the culture of Mesopotamia. Armenia was no different. But when you use the term Urartu, be careful, because Urartu is a fictional term. There was never a kingdom named Urartu. It's Ararat. Urartu is the way Assyrians called Ararat. So why, you might ask, why is this term being used at all? Because you hear Urartu all the time. British Museum, for example, has a piece on Urartian culture. Wait a minute. Urartu and Ararat is the same. In cuneiform, it's RRT, 3 symbols. So you can read it as Urartu, you can read it as Ararat. Now, problem, and this term Urartu, it's an exonym. It's the way that others call us. We don't call ourselves Armenia, right? We call ourselves Hayastan. So the way others call us is Armenia, but we'll call ourselves by a different name. And the same story happened with Urartu. the real name is Ararat, but Assyrians pronounced it Urartu, and this is how it stayed. Now, why was this term pushed forward and not Ararat? Is because when Armenians, when a kingdom which is much older than the inscription of Darius, which mentions Armenia for the first time, calls it Armenia, that happens many centuries later. Urartu is older. But if Urartu is called Ararat, Armenians have a claim to that place, you know? It is where we come from. So let's use Urartu, which sounds less Armenian than Ararat. So the Armenians won't, you know, come and say, look, you are talking about our culture. It is us. You just call us by that name. So it's a political issue, and I think Armenians should stop using term Urartu and call it by its real name, Ararat. It's nothing else. In Bible, it's Ararat. In Bible, it's spelled Ararat and not Urartu. So I'm sorry. It is Ararat.
So anyway, going back to the alphabet, I wanted to ask you another contentious question. Do you, as a specialist in calligraphy and as someone who studied alphabets, think that all the three Caucasian alphabets were invented, if not by the same person, then certainly in the same milieu? So Armenian, Georgian, and Caucasian Albania. Yes, I know we don't have much from the last one, but enough to make a judgment.
Yeah, look, it is an interesting question, and it's been asked a lot. And I will tell you this. In that time, a person like Mashtots was nowhere to be found except in Armenia. And this is not strange, because we gave birth to somebody who's got the mental capacity, the intellectual capacity, and the commitment to do things that others just simply couldn't do. So he was, in a sense, he was in the edge of the spear. He was that good. And when you are that good, it's natural that, you know, others want to use your services, because if you are best in what you are doing, and Mashtots certainly proved it with the Armenian alphabet, it was the first alphabet that he did. Although again, let's just also clarify that Mashtots was a linguist. His job was to arrange Armenian, the phonetical lineup of the Armenian. He's using a certain logic, right? So A, B, G, D, Y, Z, etc., 36 letters. He is arranging them phonetically. The second part comes, what kind of signs do you use for every sound, right? So Mashtots had to make sure that they don't look like Greek, because then we would be confused. You know, people would not make a distinction. They would think that it's Greek. So it had to look different than Greek. And Greek was very important because it was the time when Byzantium was already there. The Roman Empire became Byzantium, and the Greek language was a very dominant language in this part of the world, in Asia Minor. So it had to look different. And second thing was how to the written language is connected absolutely to spoken language, and the spoken language is a complex language. It's got difficult grammar, difficult orthography, very peculiar, because Armenians are, you know, living in this geographical location, and that is the location that influences the linguistic thinking. It influences all things, in fact, including the alphabet. So Mashtots was definitely that good, and when the Georgian king asked him to devise a Georgian alphabet, I think that was a very normal practice. I don't think there is anything here strange or unusual, because, you know, it wasn't the time when the borders were the way that they were today. You know, you couldn't know at some point whether you're in Georgia or you're in Armenia, because we're, brother and sister. We live next, side by side. We speak different languages, but we're close neighbors. So I do believe that Mashtots, yes, did the Georgian alphabet. Actually, Georgians changed their script 3 times. So the one that they're using today have got nothing to do with that early script that was devised by Mashtots, and it's not mutually intelligible, so they cannot read it. Those Georgians live today, they cannot read the old Georgian script. It's completely different from what they are using today. And Albanian, yes, it's very similar. Visually, very similar to Armenian. Most of the letters are Armenian letters. It's just assigned different phonetic values.
Okay. I learned a lot of new already today.
All right.
Thank you for that. So you've mentioned that almost right after the introduction of this new alphabet, there was an explosion of literary objects, and the heritage is huge. So what about the calligraphy of this time?
Yeah. So as a calligrapher, I will tell you one thing. For example, I want to show you something I just wrote. So this is a piece by Komitas. It's actually sort of like a morning, something you would say in a morning, like good morning in a poetic way. Okay. So if you look at the script itself and the way that the calligraphy of it is handled, there's always, a calligrapher always works a very fine line between beauty and readability. This is a difficult issue, because if you want it to be perfectly legible, readable, you must simplify the letter shapes. You must not do them in too extravagantly, otherwise the readability is lost. In Armenian, it's even more difficult than it is in Latin. Latin is a very flexible alphabet. Armenian is not very flexible. Armenian is a difficult alphabet for a calligrapher to work with. So there is something we call the letter skeleton, like the backbone of the letter, right? So Mashtots basically said the Armenian alpha should look this way, but he used a professional calligrapher who was Greek to take a tool and actually work out the shape of the letter itself, right? So the backbone, the spine of the letter, Mashtot suggested, probably also with the help of the calligrapher, let's say, let's make it this way, so it will look different from alpha. There is no other alphabet that is using this shape. He also had to make sure of that, right? So it was a collaboration between a linguist and a calligrapher. A collaboration that resulted in the end in 36 perfect letters, mathematical formula that was used for astronomy, mathematics, alchemy, whatever you want to call it. Alphabet was the thing that was used. Now, in a manuscript, you have to make sure that the text is, especially if it's dogmatic content, like, for example, Bible, right? So when it's the Astvats Ashunch, we call it in Armenian, Astvats is God, Shunch is a breath. So it's a breath of God. This is how Bible is called in Armenian. And we have Nor Katakaran and Hin Katakaran. Hin Katakaran is the Old Testament, and Nor Katakaran is a New Testament, right? So when the content of the book is sacred, it is quite important that you don't, first, you can't make any mistakes. If you do a mistake, you have to start over. The second thing is you can't really, bend the text the way you like. So there was like for people who used to sit and write the entire book by hand, it was important to make sure that it's that the shapes of the letters are consistent, that the text can be read, that it can be used by a person to read from it, because he doesn't know it by heart, so he needs to read it. If you need to read it, it has to be legible, but then at the same time it has to be also beautiful. And this is where the dilemma comes, how to make it look beautiful, sophisticated, but readable at the same time. It is not easy. I tell you, it is not easy.
Would you say that the early manuscripts are written in a severe hand, in a very strict one, and it gets looser with time, or are development? It's often said that Armenian scripts developed in parallel with scripts in Greek and Latin.
Yeah.
So there are some fashionable influences, but surely there are some inner workings here too.
Look, I don't think that, it was that dogmatic, that strict. I think it was left to the calligrapher himself, his ethics, how should he use alphabet when he's writing text that is sacred and religious in nature, right? Because one thing is when you write a personal letter, then you are free to do whatever you want to do. But if you're writing a text that needs to be, perfect, because it's a word of God, so it's got to be perfect, and you have to restrain yourself a lot of the time not to do too much with it. But I think until perhaps late Middle Ages, everything was basically used in a common style, which became base for the letters we use for printing today. When we print text in Armenian books, it's slanted, it's italic. Well, at least we used to do it like this before the 90s. It was always italic. It was always slanted to the under angle. And that's because Armenian text is easier to read when it's italic. It comes from the manuscripts.
Is there a large corpus of everyday calligraphy from this time coming to us, or it's mostly liturgical texts and sacred texts and stuff like that? Are the letters, notes, anything like that? And is there any if there is there any difference in the writing style or calligraphy between these two?
From what I studied, and I tried to study all the available material, I can tell you that only in personal correspondence, in letters written from one person to another, you have truly cursive script. In every other case, it's always basically was used more or less the same type of letters were used for the text. But let's say when an Armenian Catholicos needed to send a letter to Roman Pope in Armenian, he wrote the original in Armenian. His scribe, actually, not himself, he dictated the text, and the scribe wrote the text of the letter. Then that letter was translated either in Rome, that in Vatican, the Roman Pope had somebody who read Armenian and could read the letter for himself, because I'm not aware of the translation, visual translations of the same letter in Armenian and in Latin. Mm-hmm. There's only an Armenian version of it, so he would use a different script. Different style, which is later. It's already like 17th, 18th, 19th century, but not 10 and 11, because then there was no, I don't think there is any correspondence between Armenian Catholicos and the Roman Pope, which goes back to 10th century.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now you mentioned how the modern italic script of printed Armenian is related to the manuscript hand. what I saw of the very early printing in Armenian, the Venetian books of 16th century, they are very different.
Yeah.
They are more naive, like those inscriptions around Lake Van.
That is true.
When did that transformation happen?
Look, it's an interesting question because if we take the case of the Machitarists, which are, by the way, Catholic, right? They don't belong to Armenian Apostolic Church. They are Armenians, but they're Catholic. So
That's the order that is based on an island in Venice, right?
yes, but there is another congregation in Vienna. So there were two centers of the Armenian publishing and Armenian schools and Armenian church, but Catholic Church, one was in Vienna, one on San Lazzaro in Venice. Now, the Venice is more famous perhaps because Lord Byron studied Armenian on that island. There is a room in which Byron slept, and that room is being, sacredly kept the same way that was when Lord Byron was in Saint Lazaro and studied Armenian, and Byron studied Armenian. He actually said that Armenian is a language to talk to God. I'm quoting him. Okay, that's what Byron said. Now, naturally, because it's an Armenian island in Europe, and the surrounding is basically using Latin script, so Armenian needed to look slightly different for it to work organically with Latin alphabet. Let's say you had a text in French and you needed an Armenian to come along with it on the same page, share the same space. You had to make sure that Armenian letters in some way conform to the Latin standards, right? So they started working on different versions of the alphabets used for printing, started to do decorative alphabets that look, Armenian, but also European. And they were very successful in that. So they published different books. There is actually one very interesting one, a tiny little book that was published in France, in Paris, by somebody who claimed to be a descendant of Lusignan, the last French king, Armenian king in Kilikia, because there was a royalty there that was intermarried to the European royal families. So a lot of French crusaders that were passing through Cilicia and going into the Holy Land to liberate Jerusalem from the Turks were passing through Cilician Armenia. Now, Cilician Armenia was Christian. They wanted to help the crusaders because they were Christian like themselves, and they provided transportation. They provided safe route for the crusaders who traveled by on foot to Italy, sailed from Italy to Cilicia, and from Cilicia went down to Palestine. So Cilicia was this independent kingdom that had its own royal line, eventually intermarried with French, and Lusignan, Guy de Lusignan, who was, if I'm not mistaken, it was the second or the third crusade, he was the king of Armenia. And there is a guy who lived at the end of the middle of 18th century who said that I belong, actually my lineage goes back to the Cilician king, French king in Cilician Armenia. And he was Machitarist, by the way. He was a Machitarist father, and he published a book on Armenian calligraphy, which I saw in a National Library in Yerevan, which is very interesting because he's French. He signed the book as Lusignan. Very interesting story.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Taurus Roslin is also not an Armenian surname, and something that it comes from an English knight. There is a famous Roslin Chapel
Of
mentioned
course,
by Dan
of
Brown
course,
and
of
all that.
course,
Yeah.
of course. Yeah, the Roslin Church is a fascinating story on its own, because it is a living proof that America was discovered way before Columbus, because Roslin Church predates the discovery of America, but has on it a reliefs of corn. Corn was not known in the old world. Corn is from the New World, is from America. Then how did corn end up on a wall in Roslin Church before Columbus sailed to America? That actually proves that America was discovered much earlier than the Columbus. Yeah, the Vikings went there. The Vikings sailed to America, discovered America, brought corn from America, and that also ended up on Roslin Church. So I was always curious if there is a connection between Roslin Church and Taurus Roslin, and unfortunately, I cannot. I don't have an answer to that. I would very much like to know myself.
Well, we know that some of the Roslins intermarried in the Middle East, but we don't know to whom. Nor do we know who were Taurus Roslin's ancestors. So there is a gap, but
Yeah, yeah.
it's very, very likely. He certainly wouldn't be the only descendant of a mixed marriage at that
Yeah,
time.
he was from he was from aristocratic family, close to the king. He enjoyed a very big support from the royal family because they recognized his talent, and he was like something like Velasquez was, at the king at the court of the king of Spain, because he was the official painter of the court. Same way Roslin was at the court of the Cilician king, because of his first, he was highly born. He was from a noble family. Second, he was a very talented man, a useful man. So he was close to the king.
We have another comment on YouTube, and I once again I invite our viewers to share from where they are joining us, because well, it's always interesting to see that. And if you have any questions, please ask them, because we're already talking for 50 minutes, and we have something like 40 minutes left. So if you have questions, and if you will ask them at the last moment, we just have a chance not not to have enough time to answer them. So Turgon92, another of our regular viewers. Hello all, love to Armenia and its various art forms. Greetings from Athens. Greece is
Thank you.
watching us.
Thank you. Same to you.
Yeah. So Pavel, what else? You had a range of questions. I don't think you went through all of them. I also had something that's I started reading the comment and forgot everything I wanted to ask.
I wanted to ask you about the influence of the further flung diasporas than that of Kilikia. There is a very ancient presence of Armenians in Jerusalem, and some of the earliest examples of Armenian alphabets come from mosaics in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Then we also have mentions of diaspora as far as France in early middle. Oops.
We lost the connection.
We lost connection for a while.
Let's see what's happening. Just give us a moment, and everything will be fine, I hope.
One hopes, yeah. Meanwhile, I would like to recommend everyone to visit our guest's website. Ruben has a very comprehensive historical sketch of Armenian calligraphy. Let me just share a link for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm waiting for Ruben to answer to me
Mhm.
on Facebook, and we'll see if we can connect back to
Perhaps I
us.
could just.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, just a moment. Let
So,
me.
yeah, I think the problem with the connection.
And Ben, can
It
can you
seems,
turn your phone once again? Turn
yeah,
it
yeah.
up. Yeah,
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 sorry.
thanks.
I'm in an old building and cellular. I have internet only on my phone,
Yeah,
so sometimes it goes off and on. I like. Sorry about that, but I like to say a few things about Jerusalem. And Jerusalem is a really interesting story, and the connection of Armenians to Jerusalem is a very special one. So again, a very old community. I think Armenian presence in Jerusalem starts from 4th century or something like that. So of course, after the adoption of Christianity in Armenia, there was a lot of pilgrimage to Jerusalem because Jerusalem is a sacred place for Christianity. So Armenians went to Holy Land and established. There were many churches in the vicinity of Jerusalem and Jerusalem itself. Today there are only I think 2 chapels that are still in the old city, but Armenian community in Israel always, and in Palestine and in Jerusalem specifically, was always had a difficult history because they had to be very good in diplomacy. They were surrounded by Arabs who were Muslim. They were surrounded, and today they are Israelis and the Jewish, dominance over the old city, and then you have the Arabic part in Jerusalem. So it was always a very difficult place for Armenians to live, but they persisted until today. The Armenian presence in Jerusalem is uninterrupted, and they
There is
have.
still an Armenian quarter, right?
Yes, there is an Armenian quarter. And by the way, the second largest collection of the Armenian manuscripts in the world is in Jerusalem. First is Maten, and second is Jerusalem.
Where in the cathedral, or is there a
No, no, no,
library?
no, 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 no. There is a chapel, Armenian chapel, in the Armenian quarter in Old City, Jerusalem, and all the manuscripts are stored in that chapel. And masterpieces of Armenian miniature painting and book binding and manuscript binding are in Jerusalem. Unfortunately, they're difficult to access because it's you have to go through a lengthy process of waiting until they allow you to see the manuscript. If you want to see it in person, you have to go to Jerusalem. You have to live there for a while. You have to also like gain the confidence of these people so they will share it with you. It's not an open archive. You can go on, and take something and study it. You have to ask for special permissions and stuff like that. So it's quite difficult. But
Nor is it digitized, as far as I know.
most of it is not. And this process of digital making digital copies of the manuscripts is happening in Maten, but also unfortunately they are not sharing the material they are scanning. So for me, it's a very strange thing because if I was the guy who had access to all this material and I had a scanner, I would scan a book and put it online immediately, put it in open access, give people opportunity to see this wonderful art, these wonderful letters. Why are they kept from people? I don't understand. I think what they need to wake up and they need to understand that this is the path toward Armenian culture, and it's not their prerogative to keep that culture locked up. They need to open up. They need to share it. They need to publicize it all the time. Every time they scan something new, I want to know about this. I want to see it. I want to study it. It's important to me. But also to many, many other people. So Maten, please, we beg you, start sharing.
It is a magnificent museum. It's very nice to visit, but at very least they could scan the things that they can't
You know
can't
what they
show.
do? They take a book, open it on one page and put it under glass.
And this is it.
Under glass. I see only one spread. But this book is filled with illustrations. Where are they? I want to see the whole thing. So why are you, we know most of the books, we know by one page.
Like Echmiadzin Gospel.
That is true, that is true, that is true. And many, many others. And it makes no sense. Actually, they were donated very expensive Japanese high-resolution scanners for this purpose, to digitize the manuscripts. And they do, but they don't share it.
I was hoping you'd tell me that there is a secret link somewhere online where I can go and see it. I know they've been doing it for a while. I remember the big announcement. We scanned like the first 100 manuscripts, and they put like 100 images, one image per manuscript.
Yeah,
and where is the rest?
But I will be happy to share with you a doc file with the links to Armenian collections in all major libraries in the world, collections of digitized manuscripts. This is a list that was compiled by a friend of mine. He shared it with me, and that list is a comprehensive list with direct links to the Armenian collections, to different libraries in the world, like BNF, Bibliothèque, like the British Library.
Bodleian Library, yeah.
Yes. But Martin Ataran is not an open archive, and this has to change. This definitely has to change.
Yeah, I remember that when I visited Armenia several years ago, something like 8 years ago or something. We had not so much time in Armenia, and obviously we wanted to visit other places besides Yerevan as well.
Yeah.
And and meet with friends and and all of that. And in the end, when we decided that, we finally need to go to Matanadaran, and it was it was some holiday, and then day not accessible for outsiders, and we tried to find any connections to sort of to let us in or something, and it was late as usual for us because we do not prepare things. But it was a bit unfortunate. And but once again, when we looked for any connection to talk about it, for any connection from Matanadaran to talk to us, it was a bit hard to sort of build these bridges, and that's
I relate.
told us about this inaccessibility, which is very sad.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and I think it is important, guys, that we now have an opportunity, to call for collaboration, call for cooperation, call for as much as cultural exchange as possible, because all of us need it. We need to learn about others, and others need to learn about us. And the most important thing is building those bridges, which I personally try to do every time I have the opportunity. One of the reasons they might have been reluctant to talk to you is most of them know very poor English. So they can't really, have an intelligent conversation with you in a foreign language unless you speak Armenian, and which is their native language. So the knowledge of language is crucial, and most of the people that work in a place like that don't speak it that well, don't speak English that well.
But I think it's really important to familiarize other countries with your culture, to show what you have and what you represent and what stands behind you, because so much conflict in the modern world stems from unfamiliarity. For people to care about you, they should know you.
Absolutely. And I would say one of the best ways to do it is to, let's say, organize a joint calligraphic performance when you would invite people writing in different scripts, like bring somebody who writes in Cyrillic, bring somebody who writes in Arabic, bring somebody who writes in Georgian, you know, and make a beautiful event when different scripts interact on the same surface. You know, write an Armenian and then write Latin on top of it, and write Greek on top of it, and write, you know, so it can be one of those beautiful ways to share culture with each other.
Have you been participating in any such practices? Because I've heard of similar festivals in UK and in France, but I know of exhibitions of calligraphy in post-Soviet space, in Russia, in Ukraine before the war, but I don't know about what's happening in your parts.
It only happened once so far. In 2017, I did it with a British calligrapher. Together, we wrote on the same big piece of paper. You know, he wrote. He actually was more drawing than writing, but I was writing in Armenian. He was writing in Latin. So it was really interesting and nice. And people, it's very pleasant to observe the process. It's very interesting to see how it's done. And I know fantastic calligrapher from Ukraine who's one of the best. Fantastic work he does, and also there are some Georgian masters, and there are different, of course, people of high caliber in calligraphic world. And I think, you know, if we can organize one day such a festival of calligraphy in Yerevan, you know, I'll be the first one to clap my hands and say, welcome and come and let's do this here, and let's fall in love with writing.
I wanted to read a couple of more comments from our viewers. Firstly, Georgiana Knapp wrote that she joined us from Rochester, New York, so it's United States, and it's pretty early in the morning there. Well, not early, but still, it's morning.
Hi.
Good to see that Northern America is joining us, and. What else? Turgon92 also wrote a couple of more comments. I'm aware of Armenian silversmithing and of stone and wood carvings, which I love. I don't know much about its alphabet and calligraphy. Well, we talked about it a bit earlier during the stream, so maybe you can wind back just a bit and see and hear what we talked about some days ago. It was also the commemoration of the Armenian genocide. Just wanted to mention that, I remember. Yeah.
And so do we, and so many books were lost. Not just people. It was a great loss for the culture.
Yeah, actually, you know, it's we are in the beginning of May, so it's been only like a week since April 24, and it's a day of when we remember the lost lives, and not just lost life, also lost culture, because the destruction of the cultural heritage was immense. And actually, as we speak today, there is Armenian culture being destroyed in Karabakh, which is now under Azeri control, and they're literally erasing Armenian presence from Karabakh, which was always, I repeat, always historical Armenia. It was one of the hardest parts of Armenia to conquer, because it's a very high hill country, it's a highland, it's difficult to conquer, and people from Karabakh were always very independent. So the Persians had a difficult time. Karabakh, they could never take it. But today, Armenian churches are in danger, in real danger, and there are already precedents when they simply either demolish them or remove the crosses and start calling it an Albanian church. or Albanian, not church. I think they call it. They made up a name for it, which doesn't exist. So the threat of genocide is today just as active as it was in 1915. So again, I believe that it's up to us to decide our destiny, and it's up to us to protect our culture. Nobody's going to do it for us. So this is a wake-up call. I honestly believe that we need to wake up and start taking care of our culture and our people.
And if you've ever been to Lake Van and its surroundings, you can see what happens when you don't take care about your culture. You end up with ruins and flocks of sheep.
Yeah.
The great cathedrals, yes.
The Western Armenia is a graveyard not just of Armenians, but of Armenian architecture, of Armenian culture. It's a graveyard full of bones. And until today, it's unbelievable, but until today, we are still fighting for recognition. We're still fighting for apology. We're still fighting for them to come up and say, we're sorry. At least we're sorry for what we did to you. But so far, it's quite futile. And again, like I was saying, it's still the threat of genocide is just as active today.
Yep. I would probably say that I would invite everyone to come to Armenia. I'm not an Armenian, but our experience in Armenia was absolutely amazing, and definitely one of the things to see is the Armenian Genocide Museum, which is well, the theme is absolutely horrific, of course, but it is so masterfully done, and it tells the story in this very touching way. So yeah.
Look, I guys, you know what? I just want to say that it is about staying human, feeling empathy and caring, just like we need to care today about the innocent people that die in Ukraine that did not deserve that under any circumstances, and the Armenians who are being starved today in Azerbaijan, and we still are helpless and cannot do anything. We need to wake people up and remind them that they are human and they need to stay human under all circumstances and help each other, because if we don't, we're going to sink all together. We're all part of the same link. We're links in the same chain. If one part is drowning, the rest will come with it sooner or later. So let's be friends. Let's share culture. Let's share friendship. Let's share love. Let's share hope. Let's be hopeful and enjoy every day on this planet as if it's our last day. Because
this is not a zero-sum game. If your neighbor is prospering, you are better for it.
Yeah.
What I see around myself, and now I'm on the Balkans. As you can imagine, the memory of the war here is also very fresh.
Yeah.
And people are still. There is no finality to peace here. Everyone is just biding their time. Everyone is still hoping that the neighbor trips up and they can grab a bit of his land. And it is really frightening that all these conflicts, they just never end.
One guy said it really well. He said that the sound that accompanies a human history is a beating of our war drums. This is our history. Unfortunately, this is how it is. And but I'm not, in some way I'm an idealist, and I want to believe in good, and I do believe in good. I just think that, realistically speaking, we need to have enough courage to tell the truth, no matter the consequences, to be always honest and always admit a mistake if you made one. If you did something wrong, be man enough to admit it. And if you do that, there is a chance that you can move on. But if you keep lying to yourself and lying to the world, that's not gonna help you or anybody else. So be truthful. And calligraphy, by the way, it is one of the important things is that you need to stay pure. You cannot create beautiful letters unless you are clean inside. You clean of envy. You should never envy anybody. You should always listen to the inner voice and stay true. Otherwise, your work will be false. It won't have this quality. It won't be art. It will be false and people will feel it. So I hope that calligraphy helps people be better.
Well, let's hope that really happens. So I have a couple of more things to read. Continuing that sad theme from Turgon again. I've seen the destroyed churches and tombstones, not to mention other atrocities. Well, yeah, we discussed this a bit, and unfortunately, this is not only a thing of past, but of modernity as well. But yeah, let's all hope and work to prevent this and to stop
Absolutely.
wars. Also, Lily LV, if it fits the topic, may I ask whether Armenian calligraphy influences typefaces nowadays? What kind of issues do modern Armenian typefaces have? That's a good question, and maybe you can give some insight. And I will read one more thing or comment maybe one. I sent the link to this talk to a couple of my Armenian friends, and one of them just sent me a photo and it was like, wow, you called Ruben Malayan. I have a tattoo that follows his sketch on my body.
That's good. All right, so to answer Lily, I'll say yes. We're finally starting to started the process of perfecting Armenian typefaces for contemporary use. We have a fantastic event which is called Type Thursday. It's a worldwide event, happens the last Thursday of the month, everywhere in the world, in New York, in Barcelona, in Paris, in different countries. So people gather who love letters, who love typography, and they show their work, they discuss their work. So I've been helping them here in Yerevan. And I'm very hopeful that a young generation of designers, typeface designers, will finally produce quality work. They already begin to do that. But it is important, I think, that, for example, look, I want to show something, and maybe this will be interesting, right? So this started as a calligraphy, but I did the entire alphabet, and it was important for me, to develop it into to understand the entire 36 letters, not just the sentence I'm writing, but I want the entire alphabet. So this is already a typeface. It's not compiled as a typeface, but it is going to be. So the classical forms are beautiful, but we need also modern stuff. We need experiments. We need to write Armenian in an unexpected way, in interesting or fresh. But for all of that, you need to learn the process. You need to learn the technique. You need to enrich yourself with visual culture and visual aesthetics, because it's never just about the technique. And this is very important to understand. You might be very good technically, but something will be missing unless you put much bigger things into writing. And those bigger things are just your aesthetic perception. What is it you find beautiful in architecture, in music, in many other things. So writing is perfect when it's rich, and it's rich not just because of its visible perfection, but it's rich of content. It's rich of substance inside. This substance comes from you as a calligrapher, as an artist. So educate yourself as much as you can. Watch beautiful things, read literature. Without this, you can never be good. You need to be widely educated and know many different things. And then all of that is poured into writing when you do it. That's why the quality comes from there. So my advice to you is become better educated and commit to work. And if you do that, those two together will come, and the beautiful and wonderful things will happen.
And what do you think about the young typographers and designers working with the script today? Because when you go around Yerevan, you see multiple styles. It's an attack on your senses. Every single logo is done in its own style. Do you think it's good that there is this variety, or do you think there should be, I don't know, a more wholesome approach?
I think it is. This is something that Yerevan as a city needs to resolve, is to have a system, a visual system developed for the city, like the signs outside, the environment, the visual environment you live in needs to be regulated. Right now, it is not regulated at all. So as any self-respecting city, you need to respect the rules that are set up for that place. So I'm not saying that you need to be, it needs to be a dictatorship, but I think Yerevan needs a lot of cleaning. It needs all that visual noise, unnecessary, not really properly, professionally done, needs to be done with, and needs to be replaced with something that visually is appealing and beautiful and is actually in our environment. So it's influencing us as we pass by, like you said. When you walk in Yerevan, it's yelling at you, and it's all very eclectic, and that maybe some part of it should stay, but I would like to see Yerevan to become visually organized, more organized than it is today. And that's just Yerevan. I'm not talking about other cities in Armenia that are stuck in a stone age. They need also this work to be done. It's not just Yerevan.
Yeah, interesting. Will you talk a bit more about your modern work and maybe other calligraphers, your colleagues, what's happening on the modern calligraphy scene in Armenia, and maybe in diaspora as well? I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's a difficult question because
are you still the only Google result?
Yeah, that's the first question. If I Google nowadays Armenian calligraphy, will your website be the only one that pops up?
I don't think so. I think there are more people that are doing this. Certainly, some of my students that I started working with about 10 years ago, today, some of them matured, some of them kept practicing, not many, but some. And I really hope that eventually, there will be a community. Right now, I think there are more people doing it outside of Armenia than here. I know, for example, Anush from Los Angeles. She's she's very nice. She does beautiful stuff with Armenian alphabet, and she likes writing a lot. So we always like, compliment each other because I like the way she's doing things, and obviously the feeling is mutual. And but as a community, unfortunately there isn't one, not yet. I hope that will change with the incoming future, especially because I'm planning to teach calligraphy as a part of this new undergraduate degree that will happen in American universities. So there is one semester that is fully dedicated to calligraphy, and then there's going to be a semester fully dedicated to typeface design. And these two are directly connected to one another. So the experiment on paper will become type design. And this is interesting because it has to come from calligraphy. It has to come from handwriting.
I know it's a bit further away from your area of expertise, but what about the printing community and bookbinding community? Do you know anything about them? Are there any members of this community in Armenia? Well, we know of some of members of this community outside of Armenia, but
I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Actually, in Russian, and do you speak Russian? Do you understand Russian?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. In Russian, there is a saying, "Нет худа без добра." Okay, so I'll explain. Because of the tragic war in Ukraine, there are a lot of very smart, very intelligent Russians that came to Armenia because they could not bear the idea of collaborating with Putin regime and staying in Putin Russia. They chose to leave. It was a difficult decision for them, I'm sure, but they are here now. And I met a girl who's in love with books, in love with publishing. Her whole idea is just books, more books, and I want to make books. Let me make books. So, and she's not the only one. So, with regard of binding, I don't think there is any binding being done by hand at the moment. At least I'm not aware of it. But book lovers and people who make books and design books and love books in general, this community is not small. Armenians love books, and there are also some Russians that are here now, and we're becoming friends, and we're enriching each other, and we're talking to each other, and we're trying to absorb all the impact of them arriving to Armenia. It's been already a year, and some of them start very interesting projects. And they are very active and nice people, very intelligent and good people. So I'm hopeful, and I hope that I personally would love to learn how to bind by hand. I haven't done it yet in my life, but I hope that day comes when I will be able to write the entire book by hand and then take it and bind it. And maybe I will ask for your advice. You teach me how to do it.
We had a guest on our podcast and live stream, several times from Bulgaria, and Kalin Daskalov, his name is, and he's working under the pseudonym or whatever working name of Stopan, and he's done exactly that. He made paper. Wrote a book in his own calligraphy style, and then bound the book. Well, he's a well-known bookbinder himself, but still, that was one of his projects. He made book wholly, including the calligraphy and text inside. So that's
fantastic.
Maybe some inspiration for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they are a fantastic way to bind pages together. I saw some of them, and some of those techniques, as I know, are very, very old. Very old. Yeah. Like the way when you can use just simply one piece of thread and you can bind the pages together, that it's actually artwork. You look at the binding itself and you say, this is piece of art, just to bind the pages like that together. And I think for students, it's very important to learn this because it is giving them the chance to work with analog material, with paper, feel the paper, smell the paper, know the way, respect paper. I always tell them, never do this. You break it. You should respect paper. This is place where magic happens. So respect this material. It's very, very important. I always tell them to do that. So I think binding will definitely be in future a part of a larger course, which will be about bookmaking. We're going to teach how to make books, starting with binding the materials together and doing all that by hand. So yeah, yay for people.
Yeah, that's exactly why I asked you about if there are any courses where you have any manual experience with bookmaking in Armenia, because in my opinion it's really an important and integral part of, it should be an integral part of any course related to publishing, bookmaking, whatever, because you have this personal experience, a very different experience compared to, I don't know, industrial production of books, and better understanding of why books function in the way they function, as a structure, as a technological object and invention. So yeah,
let me show you this. I think this is one of the best books that are about Armenian typography. It's by Fred African. It's an alphabet book. He's actually was a calligrapher himself. Unfortunately, he passed away. But the work that he did is very impressive. You can buy this book in Yerevan. I'm not sure you can buy it online, but it's a nice book, and it's got a lot of different experiments with Armenian letters and alphabets. So remember the name, Fred African. He's the guy. That's him. Let's remember Fred. He gave a lot for Armenian typography and Armenian calligraphy. He did a fantastic work during his life, and this book is a good one. Also, for those who are interested in serious study of the Armenian alphabet, there is a book by Hracha Acharyan, who was a linguist, who wrote an entire book about the Armenian alphabet in Armenian. I don't think it's translated into English, but this whole book is dedicated to the Armenian writing and alphabet. So yeah, there is some literature, and if you go to your museum, no matter where you live, I'm quite sure you will find Armenian manuscripts or Armenian books there.
Yeah. Well,
you mentioned that document with links. If you don't mind, we could probably share it publicly for people to go.
Absolutely. I will do that after we finish this very nice podcast. I will send you the link. I will send you the document itself, and you can freely share it. As many people find it, better it is for everyone.
We'll then post it in the description of the video, both on Facebook and YouTube.
Great.
And I also wanted to say that we have a couple of Pavel and I were posting the links to different pages we discussed. I forgot all the words. Anyway, we posted some links, and also a couple of people posted some additional links on our Facebook live stream. So that's also something that maybe somebody would like to check. And yeah, probably that's well, it's 90 minutes already, so probably that's
okay.
It was an amazing discussion, and I just posted a link to at least the description of this book by Fred African that you mentioned and you showed. Maybe somebody would like to buy it. Probably one last thing I wanted to say, that while we lived in the Netherlands, one of my standard routines every Thursday, I went to a book market in The Hague, which was one of my favorite places in the Netherlands. And Oftentimes I saw Armenian books there, and sometimes it even were books dedicated to book arts and book history, and I tried to buy them every time. Well, if they were dedicated to book history, I tried to buy them every time I saw them, if they were not too expensive, and that's how I added a couple of Armenian published books about manuscripts and decorations and all of that stuff to my collection. Unfortunately, I'm not able to show any of them today because we just moved to England and everything is still in boxes. But
Okay.
yeah, anyway, check the book markets everywhere you go, and if you see something,
By the way,
just
there
save
is
them.
something about the Armenian community in Netherlands, which also has a very interesting history, because the Armenians were responsible for trade for selling carpets that they would manufacture either in Persia or in Armenia, and bring them to Europe and sell them in Europe. So a lot of the, for example, in the paintings of Hans Holbein, the famous paintings, all the carpets are Armenian carpets, and you can recognize them because of the ornament on the carpet itself. So they even have a term, Holbein carpets, but those are Armenian-made carpets, which Armenians brought to Europe. And one of the centers was in Amsterdam, and there was a big Armenian community in the Middle Ages in Amsterdam. But it was at some point dissolved and assimilated. So a lot of Dutch have Armenian blood in them, but they don't know it.
And also the red color from those carpets.
Yes.
It's cochineal. It's Armenian cochineal, and you can find it in manuscripts from all of Europe. Those small crushed insects.
Yeah, that produce a very dense and beautiful shade of red that was used to produce ink. This famous Armenian red color, Vortank Armid, and this is the term is in Armenian, and it was known in Europe, and it was very expensive to buy. But when you are a king and you want to commission, for your family, a royal Bible that needs to be written with the best materials, yeah, you pay for Vortank Armid too, and you use it.
Yeah.
And a great source on that, there was an exhibition on cochineal in the Met Museum, and they produced a voluptuous tome, and so many things there are from Armenia or made from Armenian colors.
Yeah, interesting.
Examples of European.
Very interesting. Actually, because of there were many. Armenia is very rich in minerals, very different minerals, and as you know, a lot of the ink was made from minerals. Ink was also made from wood, and it was made from the different vegetables, etc., etc. But minerals were also widely used, and lapis lazuli, which was a famous shade of blue used in the Middle East and Mesopotamia, some parts of it was coming from the Armenian highland into Mesopotamia and was used there. From Afghanistan, there were two sources. Arata, which is Ararat and Armenia, and Afghanistan on the edge of Kashmir. From there, they were also bringing lapis lazuli into Mesopotamia and used that for decoration and as a color in the birthplace of civilization. Well, at least that's how it's called today.
Yeah. Well, it was very insightful and inspirational, this talk today. Thanks a lot, Ruben, for joining us, for spending time with us. I'm sure we'll find an opportunity to talk again in the future, because you obviously are working on a lot of projects, and maybe when you launch this new course you've been talking about, and you have some results and some students, maybe we can invite you with some of the students to talk about their experiences as well. Sometimes it's interesting to have like 2 or 3 guests at the same time. So that
absolutely.
And
absolutely.
please think about it. And so Vagan Tetavasyan on Facebook, thank you for discussion and inspiration. Love it. And thanks to everyone who's been watching us live, and thank you to everyone who will be watching this video in the future. As usual, we'll cut small bits and pieces of this video and post them on TikTok and Instagram because, well, we usually have much more views there. So that's our preferred way of, yeah.
Stefan,
Yeah.
I also want to say thank Armina because she was the one who suggested this podcast to happen, this conversation to happen, and she's in love with letters. She lives in Ghent, which is, I think, one of the most beautiful cities on the face of the planet. I was there once, and I was really blown away by the architecture and the atmosphere in Ghent. I would very much like to come back again. And I want to thank you for this opportunity and comment on the job you are doing, because on the background of all the TikTok and the unwrapping candy and getting 100,000 views because you bought a new cell phone and you show it to the people, I think talking about bookbinding, manuscript art, and history is something I would prefer.
We try to do our best, and we hope more people will subscribe. So please check the links in the description, both to our social networks and to Ruben's website and Instagram. Please subscribe and stay tuned for more amazing bookish and calligraphy stuff in the future. As usual, we'll stay for a minute or so longer while the stream drops, and then that's it for today. Thanks everyone for watching. See you next time in a week. Probably we don't have a guest scheduled yet, but we'll
see what we can do about
it. Can do. Yeah.
Thank you guys. Thank you, Pavel, and thank you, Stepan. Спасибо.
Thank you a lot.
Спасибо.